Octopus is a unique ingredient in the cooking world. It goes from being both mildly disgusting and also sometimes genuinely terrifying to being truly one of the most delicious things that you can cook. And I think there's an easy assumption based on how this looks. It's gonna taste very intense or something, but in fact it is just the opposite. The reality is octopus is actually one of the most mild flavored seafoods you can make. And there's so much to be learned from cooking it. So today I'm making what may be the best preparation of octopus I've ever had. First, I'm gonna braise the octopus in a super aromatic and highly acidic broth, and then it's gonna be crisped up to create a very crispy exterior and a very tender interior. And I'll also be making it with a romesco sauce, which is a delicious Spanish spicy tomato and almond sauce, crispy potatoes, and an aromatic chili oil. So I got this octopus frozen, which is totally fine. And then I thawed it in a bowl of cold water. Once it's thawed, you're gonna wanna remove the top part. Some of the meat up here is edible, and a lot of people do like to clean this out and cook it, but I am not one of them. So I always cut right here to separate the tentacles and just cook them. And right off the bat, it's probably surprising how large this octopus looks, but this is probably gonna shrink by 60 to 70% while you cook it. And now it's time to braise it, but unlike what I usually think of as a braise, we're actually gonna do the high heat cooking after the slow braising as opposed to before. And the reason is you want to fully tenderize the octopus and then crisp it up later. It actually has more in common to the approach you take with French fries than it does with the traditional braise, where you brown the meat in order to cook that Maillard flavor into the sauce. I sliced up half an onion, a fennel top. You can definitely feel free to use the bulb, but the fennel I bought had a top, so I figured I'd save the bulb for something else. And I also added a bundle of herbs. I'm using rosemary and thyme. And then I put the octopus into a pot and added almost a whole bottle of dry white wine. Then I just made sure the octopus was covered with some extra water. So I just brought this up to a gentle simmer and cooked it for about an hour and 45 minutes. And just like any braise, you can use any aromatics you want because octopus takes on these flavors extremely well. So definitely have fun with it. One that I really want to try is with gochujang and jinro. The only strong recommendation I do have is to use something with plenty of acidity like wine or citrus juice. As a side note, there is also a really interesting technique from, I think, Galicia in northern Spain that does actually make the octopus more tender, where you make a broth, bring it to a simmer, and then dunk the octopus in and out 3 times before finally leaving it in to fully cook it. This technique is very popular in restaurants. In fact, it was the way I was taught to cook octopus, but I'm still not totally sure why it works. Despite what you read online about slowly bringing the proteins up to temperature, the technique that I always use at home also brings the proteins slowly up to temperature. And there's this old adage, maybe you've heard of it, which goes something like, cook it for 30 seconds or 30 minutes. The idea is you either have to cook it very quickly or for a long time to get it tender. But in my experience, do not cook this for 30 seconds and expect anything that isn't like a nightmare from 7th grade science class. I really think you have to cook this for a prolonged period of time to make sure it gets soft. Even 30 minutes is not nearly enough time. There is one thing you want to look for to check if it's done. You can see this flap of meat between the 2 tentacles. Once this starts to pull apart and tear very easily, the octopus is tender. And then just put it onto a wire rack to cool and dry. For the romesco, I blended 250 grams of almonds, a toasted seeded ancho chili, 8 grams of smoked paprika, 100 grams of jarred roasted red peppers, and 250 grams of tomato puree or tomato concentrate, canned tomato. Pick your tomato product of choice. I would just not recommend tomato paste. Once it's ground up, season it with 30 grams of red wine vinegar, 150 grams of good olive oil, and 12 grams of salt. And another side note, I cannot recommend enough using gram-rated recipes. They open up the door to a lot of creativity and consistency in your cooking. And it's actually also a lot faster once you get used to using a scale. But here are some conversions if you prefer volumetric measurements. This is a great sauce that goes well with a lot of things. Steak is a personal favorite. I did make my own chili oil, but you can definitely feel free to use a chili crisp or a jarred chili oil. But one of the nice things about making your own is you can customize the flavors. That said, what I did is toast 3 ancho chilies, 3 Poya chilies, and 1 chipotle in a 350-degree oven for about 3-ish minutes. Less is better than more here because these things do burn very quickly and really do not need to be very toasted. And I also added a few of my favorite spices, star anise, fennel seed, and allspice. Now grind these and put them into a pot along with 250 grams of grapeseed oil. Turn the heat on high and wait until you just see a tiny simmer and immediately turn it off. Let it steep for about 15 minutes and then strain it through cheesecloth. I am still surprised every time that I make a chili oil just how good it smells. As far as a crispy potato, I went with a very simple one, which actually does work very well, but feel free to pick your crispy potato of choice. I started by baking a starchy potato wrapped in foil with some herbs in a 350-degree oven, just like a baked potato, for about 1.5 hours until it was fully cooked. And then I let it cool and cut it into my favorite sort of classic nug cut, and then fried them in 375-degree peanut oil until they were golden brown. Drain them on paper towels and season them immediately with salt. This technique has quickly become my favorite for a quick fried potato because I find that the first cook in most recipes is usually the messiest, but this one is fast and easy, and the herb aroma does cook into it pretty well. And now to finish the octopus, you need to pop out this little inedible beak out of the center of the tentacles, and then I cut them into individual pieces and put them onto a tray to coat them in a little bit of grapeseed oil, and then I popped them into the broiler for 2 or 3 minutes until they were very crispy. If you don't have a broiler, just do this in a 450-degree oven or deep fry them. They would be delicious deep fried. And I really think that this is the most essential part of the whole process because it goes from an octopus which is good to an octopus that might change your life. It's crispy on the exterior, tender on the interior. You should give it a shot and it's gonna be good. But anyway, that's all from me. Thank you for watching and I will see you soon.